I'd like to call to order the Middletown City Council meeting for Tuesday, August 18th, 2020. We could start with a moment of meditation followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we'll start this evening with our citizen comments. We have 3 of them. When you come to the dais, please state your name and address for the record. Roll call. Let's do a roll call before we do that. Man, I always mess something up. Thanks, guys. Ms. Skanku, please call the roll for us.
Ms. Vittori.
Here.
Ms. Nenny.
Here.
Mr. Moon.
Here.
Mr. Mulligan.
Here.
Mayor Condrey.
Here. Okay, citizen comments. We have 3 of them this evening. I'd first like to call, they're in the order that they were received, Louis Flenner.
My name is Louis Flenner. I live at 110 Libby Street. I'm not trying to be disrespectful to anybody, okay? But on Libby, it seems like that we have a drag strip. There's people flying up and down the street. They're doing burning rubber constantly. This happens from 4 o'clock in the afternoon all the way up to sometimes 11:30, quarter to 12 at night. I've called the police the first time I seen it. The gentleman approached me and told me that he asked me if I called him, and I said yes. He said it's not going to do any good because they're not going to show up. I waited to 9:45. There was not one police officer. Nobody showed up. It gets aggravating because these guys are flying up and down the street. And I witnessed the other day, the guy came down Libby, made a left-hand turn onto Casper. He hit a refrigerator and knocked it about 20 feet. Now, if that was a child there, that kid would have got killed. And it just seems like I said, every time we call, we don't really get a response. It takes 45 minutes or they don't show up at all. So I don't know what the issues are, but, they need to be resolved, really. Because there's 3 cars involved, and they're going to kill somebody. Because this morning, the one guy, he came off Libby and turned onto Central, and he done a donut right in front of Central Avenue and went across the tracks. That's ridiculous. And my other complaint is, there's weeds growing up in the middle of the streets and stuff like that. Casper, Langlehart, it looks like, I don't know, you take a lawnmower down there and cut the grass. There's weeds just all over. In Manchester, they just blacktopped it. You got weeds growing up all over the place now. So it's not very good. And I'll just stop at that for right now, okay?
Thank you very much for
Right,
bringing this
thank
to our
you.
attention, and we'll have someone follow up with you. Appreciate it. Next, I have Michael Jenkins.
Thanks. I wish I'd picked a different night to bring forward maybe a petty thing. I'm Michael Jenkins, 514 Euclid Street, just off of Grand Avenue. That's the modest end of Euclid Street. My reason for addressing council has to do with the unreasonable amount of emergency legislation. Tonight's agenda has 3 emergency declarations out of 5 considered. I'm trying to be generous, and I only considered the last 2 months, but since June 2nd, there have been 37 legislative actions, of which 27 were declared emergencies. Is our town in such a shape that 2/3 of public business must be considered emergency? The most recent minutes of council public meetings with no emergency occur April 21st, right in the midst of quarantine. I have 4 examples that are kind of egregious to me. I'll skip them. One of the issues I find troubling is like labor contracts considered emergency. I worked under a slew of labor agreements between the AEIF and Armco and AK Steel. None of them just popped up overnight. We had 1 year's notice of the strike turn lockout in 2006. While mentioning Armco, let me say that most every maintenance foreman has a sign pinned up behind his desk. It says, "Lack of planning on your part does not make an emergency on my part." An even more galling disregard of the emergency tool is scheduling the emergency. I've seen in minutes where an item is considered an emergency and it doesn't come before council in 2 weeks. It's not understandable to this little brain. Election day hasn't changed yet. What possible reason for not reading an income tax proposal twice is called for? Are we quelling public dissent? I can cite Article 4, Section 3 of the City Charter, Emergency Ordinances and Resolutions, and that's some talking. But the reason for such emergency shall be stated in the ordinance or resolution. I understand this is a council of business owners, and people in this most conservative part of the world say government should be run more like a business. Maybe so, maybe not. It is not surprising and all the more distressing that so many of these legislative actions here are passed unanimously. There seems to be no room for dissent or alternative views. However, that's a topic for another citizen comment. I want to thank you guys for your work. It's not something I ever want to do.
Thank you, and appreciate you keeping us accountable. Okay, the third citizen comment I have is from, I think it says Cal Wills. Cal.
I know you guys are supposed to vote on the COP program today. I just had a couple comments, okay? Good evening. I'm here this evening to speak on the council voting to hire 2 new officers through a community-oriented police grant. I personally am pro defund the police, but I do believe it could be a good idea to hire 2 new police officers to aid in community-oriented policing if done correctly, with involvement from the communities that should be impacted most by this program. I am all for this program if we are going to put trained officers who understand the conditions that cripple certain communities. Conditions such as poverty, addiction, undiagnosed mental health, and poor education. We would need the type of police officers who will treat everyone they come into contact with fairly. Officers who will not hold personal vendettas against those they believe to be, or who in fact are, involved in a criminal lifestyle, but instead can look at the person who grew up in the conditions I mentioned earlier and display some understanding of poor choices they may make. I would love for the police department to gain the trust of the black community. I'm not referring to the blacks such as myself who have moved out of the South End, but the trust of those who still reside there and know the police who regularly patrol that part of town. I think this would be a great time for the Middletown Police Department to hire an African-American woman, not just because she's black, but because the black community is more trusting of women, especially those who look like our sister, aunt, or mother. Seeing someone who looks like them that shows they care could persuade some of our black youth to one day become police officers in their communities. A black female officer would also relate to people in the black community, which allows her to do her job without the fear that some officers naturally have when policing the black community. That fear sometimes leads to poor judgment and the death of citizens across this country. I'm sure with proper networking, our police department can find qualified black women who would be willing to work here in Middletown. The city will not be safer by simply hiring 2 new police officers, especially ones who struggle to relate to other cultures. I have lived in Middletown for over 30 years and watched police officers who were known racist by the community and the police department move to high-ranking positions within the force and eventually retire. They could hire 20 new police officers and it would not prevent crime. We have to attack the conditions that lead people to commit crimes. For example, the addict who is in the beginning stage of withdrawal and dreading what he or she is going to feel like if they go into complete withdrawal is going to go out and commit a crime to get the drug no matter how many police are on duty. The impoverished person who doesn't have a clue how they will feed their family or get the lights back on will surely still turn to crime if that is the only solution they know. If this council is going to approve this grant, I hope it will oversee this process to assure that a true commitment is made to hire minority officers, in particular a black
3
female.
minutes. We have a 3-minute limit. I'm sorry, Mr. Wills. Thank you very much. Appreciate your comments. Thank you for all our citizens who took the effort to come up and speak with us. We appreciate it very much. We'll move on to our council comments. We'll shake it up a little bit tonight. Let's start with Mr. Moon.
All right, thank you, Your Honor. First, want to extend my congratulations to the fire personnel that are here tonight that are being promoted. Certainly a noteworthy achievement, and our congratulations and thanks for your service to our city. Wanted to, I believe we had a newspaper article on it, but wanted to mention as well that Sunset Park is reopened after the long-term control plan project there, and it just looks beautiful. So thank you to all the city staff that was involved, Scott Tadich and his team. It's just really a crown jewel of our park system, and if you haven't been by to see it yet, I encourage you to check it out. Lastly, but certainly not least, I want to extend my heartfelt condolences to the Sharon family on the loss of Melanie, to Jamie and to his kids. Our thoughts and prayers are with you. She was an incredible woman of faith with a passion for life. So condolences to them. And that's all I have, Your Honor.
Ms. Nenny.
Thank you. With respect to everyone who came down here tonight for the pinning ceremony, I will hold my comments on the COPS grant to the legislative portion of this evening, and also echo Councilman Moon's regrets to the family of Jamie Sharon and the loss of his wife. And I will cede my time to the rest of council. Thank you.
Mr. Mulligan.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'll add my congratulations to Mr. Patton, Verdon, and Ludwig on their promotions and appointments tonight. And to address the comments of the gentleman regarding emergency legislation and the fact that legislation often passes 5-0. As council, we get together probably once a year for a strategic planning session and direct staff to implement strategies and tactics that are consistent with our master plan and our objectives for the coming year or years. And with that, they bring before us, twice a month legislation that's consistent with that. If it's not consistent with the master plan or our strategic objectives, that legislation is not brought forward. So that's why often you see votes that are 5-0, 4-1, and council has had an opportunity to review the legislation and the packet that we get in the days before the meeting or even in the weeks before the meeting. So it's not that there's a lack of discussion on these items. It's simply our questions are answered. The legislation by and large is consistent with our strategic objectives. And that's why there's not much dissent, as you would see in a larger legislative body. And with regard to the emergency nature, the emergency legislation, I think, is just a bad name. Emergency, it's implement. We want government to move at the same speed as business does, and the way we do that is to, again, implement legislation or resolutions that would not be subject to a referendum and perhaps delay the implementation of that legislation. So if we want city government to move quickly and be agile, we have to use that tool of emergency legislation. And it's not that we're trying, again, to hide things or do anything that would bypass the open view of the public, but simply we want to move quickly. And the emergency legislation does require a supermajority of council. So if you get 4 votes, that's a supermajority, and there's a broad consensus that it is a good idea. And if you get 4 yes votes, it's implemented and beyond the reach of referendum. So just hopefully that'll clarify. But I appreciate the comments, and And in recent years, we've had second read emergency. That way, we do have time to get public input. It's on the agenda twice before we vote on emergency measure. So that I think that's been a good objective, and we've been pretty good in following that. So I hope that informs the questions on that. Thank you, Your Honor.
Ms. Vittori.
Thank you. I wanted to also congratulate tonight's firemen in their pinning ceremony and basically say a big thank you to all of our first responders. It has been a rough week plus in Middletown, and we know that we're already thinly staffed. So I really appreciate the effort that I know is going out there on the streets. And unfortunately, crime is up seemingly across the country, and who knows the future. But I'm very grateful for our very hardworking police and fire. I'd also want to extend my condolences to the Sharon family. Jamie's wife was lovely. I enjoyed spending time with her, and I extend my prayers to them in this difficult time. And then I'd also like to say good luck to all the families this week going back to school, whether it be remote, in person, whatever you're doing. I know teachers and staff and admin have worked so hard to get ready for this week, and like everything, we will adjust and overcome and make this the best back to school that we've never seen before. So, thank you.
Thank you. I always like when we have a police or fire event at council because we get a lot of people here. So thank you, all of our first responders. It's great to see you here. And the only comment I had to add this evening was I noticed in the meeting minutes from the Middletown Visitors Bureau that they're asking people to complete Google reviews of Middletown Visitors Bureau. So that will help our Visitors Bureau stand out amongst others and bring more visitors to our city, hopefully. So I encourage you all to do a Google review of Middletown Visitors Bureau if you get a chance. And that's all I have this evening. Mr. Palahniuk, City Manager reports.
On the top.
Amy to the rescue.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, if I can ask the City Council's indulgence, I would like to read a certificate of appreciation on behalf of our retiring Deputy Fire Chief. We have these gentlemen here for the fire department that are being promoted today, and the reason that opportunity exists is because that one of our very well-known deputy fire chiefs has had the opportunity to take a very much deserved retirement. So if I can, I'd like to read this, and this is from Mayor Nicole Condrey. Whereas for the past 32 years, Brent Dominy has demonstrated unwavering dedication to the Middletown Division of Fire. He was hired on April 28, 1988, and was promoted to Fire Lieutenant on March 1, 1992. And whereas throughout his career, Brent Dominy has been influential to the department in technical rescue, confined space, and hazmat training. He was promoted to Fire Captain on May 8, 2002. His dedication to the firefighting profession will stand as a hallmark for others to emulate. And whereas Brent Dominy was promoted to Deputy Fire Chief on March 28, 2008, his bravery, professionalism, and leadership have positively impacted the safety and quality of life for our residents. The City of Middletown is a better place for his service. Now therefore, by virtue of the authority vested in the mayor, and on behalf of City Council, city staff members, and all our citizens, I take great pleasure in congratulating you on your well-earned retirement and tender this certificate of appreciation. To Brent Dominy, thank you for your commitment to the city and the citizens of Middletown, and best wishes for you to enjoy a long, healthy, happy retirement. Thank you, sir, very much. We appreciate that. Please say a few words if you would. We'd appreciate it.
Thank you. I had no idea this was coming.
Wore my fire shirt today. If I could shake your hand, I would, but I'll.
Socially distant, yeah, there we go.
Definitely smiling.
Ed.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
One other thing I wanted to mention is I know that we had talked about doing a strategic planning retreat, and I had come on to the scene a little bit late in the year. Usually we like to do that prior to a budget process. I think that's rather difficult this year given that we're already well into it. But if it would be acceptable to council, I would love to see us plan for something perhaps beginning early next year, maybe late in January, early February. And if that sounds like that makes sense, then we'll begin planning that process and look forward to getting city council as well as senior staff and myself together and really looking at objectives and goals and priorities and doing some strategic planning. And hopefully that will be a way to sort of begin the year and look at how we can move forward in the best interest of Middletown. Thank you.
Great. Okay, that'll bring us to our consent agenda. Ms. Gaglu, please present that for us.
For your consideration this evening, we have to approve the city council minutes from June the 2nd, June the 16th, and July 7th, 2020. To receive and file board and commission minutes from the Board of Zoning Appeals, January 9th and May 6th, 2020. The Architecture Review Board, January 16th, 2020. The Visitors Bureau from January 27th, April 20th, May 19th, June 15th, and July 20th, 2020. The Historic Commission from May the 7th, 2020, and May 28th, 2020, and the Planning Commission from July 8th, 2020. To approve the final record plat for Sawyer's Mills, Section 3A, and to confirm the following promotional appointments in the Department of Public Safety, Division of Fire. Brian Patton to the position of Fire Lieutenant, Jamison Verdon to the position of Fire Captain, and Stephen Ludwig to the position of Fire Deputy Chief.
I move to approve the issues and actions set forth in the consent agenda.
Second?
Ms. Gaglu, please call the roll.
Ms. Nenny.
Yes.
Mr. Moon.
Yes?
Mr. Mulligan.
Yes.
Mayor Condrey.
Yes.
Ms. Vettori.
Yes.
Okay, that brings us to what most of you, I'm guessing, are all here for, our pinning ceremony.
Mayor, City Council, City Manager, members of the community, good evening. I'm Assistant Chief Tom Snively. I have the pleasure tonight to introduce to you some of the best firefighters the fire service has to offer. Tonight you will get to see the pinning of Brian Patton to Lieutenant, Jamison Verdon to Captain, Steve Ludwig to Deputy Chief. This is an opportunity for you to get to meet the division's future leaders. Would also like to give a shout out to Chief Lally. Thanks for your support there with the shirt. He's certainly in our thoughts and prayers every day. Each of these promotions is a result of hard work and steadfast commitment to this community. You should be proud of these firefighters, Chief Lally and I sure are. The path to promotion is not an easy one. Candidates are required to study for a very difficult written exam. It covers a vast amount of source material. They're required to pass that written exam before moving on in the process. Next is an assessment center where old guys like me try to put them through the ropes and see how well they do in simulated fire scenarios, personnel problems, et cetera, et cetera. The testing is highly competitive. A lot of times people are separated by a fraction of a point. These gentlemen test against not only their peers, but in a lot of cases their best friends. Not an easy thing. These guys represent over 60 years of firefighting experience. I have a great deal of confidence in each of them to succeed in their positions, and we will surely give them all the support they need. First up, Brian Patton, would you come on down with Josh? Brian started his fire service career at Coleraine Township down towards Cincinnati, serving 12 years there. Brian began his career in Middletown, 1998. Brian is an experienced firefighter, paramedic, holds many certifications, including ice water rescue, which obviously of late has become very important to us, confined space rescue, hazmat tech. Brian is also a very experienced fire service educator. He's taught at Butler Tech since 2006. Brian is responsible for teaching the fire service's future professionals, not an easy task. Brian is here tonight with his family, including his wife Brenda, and Brian's son Josh will be doing the pinning tonight. Congratulations. Next up, Jamie Verdon. Please come on down with your mother. Jamie's here tonight with his family, including his mother Violet, who will do the pinning. Lieutenant Verdon started his fire service career at Fairfield Township Fire Department. Sorry, Captain. You already took legislation there, so refer to him as Captain. Captain Verdon began his career in Middletown in 2000. He's promoted to squad person in 2001, promoted to fire apparatus operator in 2010, and then promoted to lieutenant in 2016. Jamie is also a very experienced firefighter. He's a paramedic, has numerous technical rescue certifications. He's an instructor. Jamie is responsible for rolling out the water rescue program, including not only the design of the program, the funding through grants, a lot of hard work. Jamie is a problem solver. Jamie's family is in attendance tonight, as I mentioned, along with his wife Dina. His mother Violet will do the captain's pinning tonight. Congratulations, Jamie. Last but certainly not least, Steve Ludwig, could you come up with your daughter, Britt? Deputy Chief, or from now on we'll refer to him as Chief Ludwig, began his fire service career as a part-time firefighter in the townships of Greene and Coleraine down in Cincinnati, while he earned his undergraduate degree from the University of Cincinnati. Steve started his career with Middletown in 1996. Steve is a paramedic and holds many technical rescue certifications. He also serves on the Butler County Technical Rescue Team. Steve was promoted to squad person April 13 of 1999. He was assigned as the fire marshal in 2000, promoted to lieutenant in 2008, promoted to captain in 2015. Steve is a graduate of the National Fire Academy's Executive Fire Officer Program. Steve has a Bachelor of Science degree in Criminal Justice, and he has a Master of Science in Safety, Security, and Emergency Management. We have high expectations for Steve. The reasons are obvious. You're looking at executive leadership of the fire department. So tonight, Steve is here with his family, including his wife, Beth. Steve's daughter, Britt, will pin him as Deputy Chief. Thank you very much for your support.
Thank you, guys. And I look forward to getting schooled by some firefighters in October when I attend a firefighting 101 class, so that'll be interesting. Thank you, everyone, for your service. If those of you wish to not remain for the rest of the meeting, please, we welcome you to depart. We would love to have you stay, but we will not be offended if you decide to get on with your evening.
Excuse me.
The firefighters tend to leave with a lot less uproar than the police officers. Just to take a note on that one. Okay, let's move on to our motion agenda for the evening. Ms. Skank, will you please present this for us?
To approve the purchase of highway rock salt from Compass Minerals Incorporated of Overland Park, Kansas, in the amount of $55.81 per ton for the approximate usage of 4,500 tons over the 2020-2021 winter season.
So move for adoption.
Second?
Ms. Ganku, please call the roll.
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan?
Yes.
Mayor Condrey?
Yes.
Ms. Nanny?
Yes.
Ms. Vettori?
Yes.
The second item is to adopt the recommended Public Transportation Safety Agency Plan for Middletown Transit System.
So move for adoption.
Second.
Ms. Ganku, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Mulligan?
Yes.
Mayor Condrey?
Yes.
Ms. Vettori?
Yes.
Ms. Nenny?
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Yes.
And finally, to authorize a transfer of property to adjacent property owners through the vacant side lot program. Now, would you like for me to read these individually, or?
Do we have counsel here to see if that's necessary?
My suggestion would be if we just read the addresses, you would not need to read for the record any of the other information. It would need to be the addresses.
All right, so address 621 Crawford Street for the sale price of $973.25. Okay, 626 Crawford Street, 808 8th Avenue, 3204 Morgan Street, 847 9th Avenue, 1822 North Avenue, 3108 Selden Avenue, 818 10th Avenue, 3035 Titus Avenue, 3100 Yale Drive, 2024 Yankee Road.
So move for adoption.
Second.
Ms. Ganku, will you please call the roll? Oh, that was Ms. Ninny.
Okay. Mayor Condrey,
Yes.
Ms. Vettori,
I'm going to abstain because I know two of the parties involved.
okay. Ms. Nenny,
Yes.
Mr. Moon,
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan,
Yes.
Okay, Ms. Cohen, will you be presenting legislation this evening?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Tonight we have 5 pieces of legislation. We are asking for two to be declared an emergency this evening. Ask for motion to waive the charter requirements regarding 2 readings and 30 days to enactment regarding Ordinance O-2020-39 and Ordinance O-2020-40.
I move that the charter provision requiring 2 separate readings be waived and that the ordinance number 2020-39, ordinance 2020-40 be declared emergencies and read one time only.
Second?
Ms. Ganku, please call the roll.
Ms. Vettori,
Yes.
Ms. Nenny,
Yes.
Mr. Moon,
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan,
Yes.
Mayor Condrey.
Yes.
First piece of legislation is Resolution R 2020-24, a resolution authorizing the city manager to accept a grant and enter into grant agreement for the 2020 COPS hiring program with the U.S. Department of Justice. Here for a second reading.
So move for adoption.
Second?
Do we have any comments?
Yes, thank you. To everyone who came out in support of the COPS grant funding, we were recently awarded. Thank you, and thank you for your continued support. As the mayor pointed out at the last council meeting, there is consensus at the dais that Middletown needs more officers. Our department is understaffed and our officers are overworked. Accepting this grant money means that we'll have the salaries of 2 new designated community-oriented police officers, which are much needed, subsidized and secured for a minimum of 4 years. As this grant was previously presented to council, the terms would also require us to maintain these new officers in addition to the currently budgeted level of officers, and that dipping under that total would have required us to return the federal funding. With 3 budgeted positions currently open and 7 to 8 officers retiring over the next few years, this gave me reason to pause. In a time when, among other things, revenues are down due to the pandemic, budgetary discretion is more important than ever. With the extension of our deadline and 2 additional weeks to consider the grant, I had to know more about the strings attached to accepting this federal money, and found a document provided by the COPS department website which outlined the acceptance guidelines, which I found very helpful. After sharing this document with council and our city manager, Jim pointed out that in his review of the materials, he discovered that we would have more flexibility with regards to the maintenance of staffing levels than previously understood. I will refer to him to explain this in more detail, but I admit that this new information relieves me of my previous concerns with regard to accepting the grant funding. Thank you.
Any other comments from council?
Just one, Your Honor. I agree with Ms. Ninny, and I guess my request, moving forward, this was one of those perhaps where it moved a little too quickly, because Friday afternoon we received the memorandum from Mr. Palahniuk saying it was going to be on Tuesday's agenda. Didn't have a lot of time to get those questions answered, so I'm glad that we had the pause to get those concerns addressed. So happy to support this and again get some more boots on the ground, continuing to do good work through our police department. So thank you.
I'll just add, my opinion hasn't changed in the last 2 weeks, but I do want to express my gratitude to the Department of Justice for working with us to extend this deadline multiple times, and I'm happy to support this tonight and get several more officers on our streets as we need. That's all I have.
Any other comments? I remain in full support, and I'm grateful for everything the police department does. And I know, Chief Burke, this has been a challenging one to find the details about. So thank you for all your hard work, as well as Mr. Palahniuk. Okay, Ms. Skank, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Nenny,
Yes.
Mr. Moon,
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan,
Yes.
Mayor Condrey,
Yes.
Ms. Vettori,
Yes.
Next matter will be ordinance O 2020-39, an ordinance authorizing a contract with the Great Lakes Construction Company for repairs to the University Boulevard Bridge and declaring an emergency.
So move for adoption.
Second?
Ms. Skank, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Moon,
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan,
Yes.
Mayor Condrey,
Yes.
Ms. Nenny,
Yes.
Ms. Vettori,
Yes.
Third matter is ordinance O 2020-40, an ordinance authorizing a contract with Norfolk Southern Railway Company related to the repairs to the University Boulevard Bridge and declaring an emergency.
So move for adoption.
Second?
Ms. Skank, will you please call the roll?
Mr. Mulligan,
Yes.
Mayor Condrey,
Yes.
Ms. Vettori,
Yes.
Ms. Nenny,
Yes.
Mr. Moon,
Yes.
Item number 4 this evening is ordinance O 2020-41, an ordinance amending section 209.06, authority of the city manager and purchases of the codified ordinances. Here for a second reading and ready for action.
So move for adoption.
Second?
Ms. Skank, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Condrey,
Yes.
Ms. Vettori,
Yes.
Ms. Nenny,
Yes.
Mr. Moon,
Yes.
Mr. Mulligan,
Yes.
And finally, we have number 5, which is ordinance O 2020-42, an ordinance establishing a procedure for and authorizing a contract with Miller Pipeline LLC for the 2020 sanitary sewer lining project and declaring an emergency. No action is requested until September 1st.
Mr. Palahniuk, would you like to provide a little more information about this ordinance?
Yes,
Or staff?
thank you. Madam Mayor, members of council, this is basically the city's yearly sanitary sewer lining project, so that we identify those areas of underground sanitary sewer that are deficient, that need replacement and/or repair. And this process is a cured-in-place liner that winds up being put into the sewer that, in effect, repairs it as if you would be developing it new, but without the invasive procedure of tearing it up. So this year we received 6 different contract proposals. The lowest and the best of those proposals that we would be putting forward for acceptance is Miller Pipeline. Their total cost of $335,284.55. That cost would cover 12 different separate street sections of replacement with the cured-in-place liner. There's 182 service laterals that would be replaced in that process. Cost of the bond would be covered, traffic maintenance, as well as a contingency of $25,000. Those funds would come out of our budgeted sanitary sewer capital fund.
Any comments from council?
Just a quick question, and maybe you have the answer, or maybe you can provide it later, but what is the cost savings of doing something like this newer method, as opposed to a traditional tear up and replace?
I would have to refer that to Scott if he's here. Scott probably can respond to that.
Yeah, this is much more cost efficient than, this is for smaller diameter sewers, and it would be much more cost efficient than digging up the street and replacing it. We'll say this is not a new technology. This has been around probably for 20-plus years at this point, so it's a proven, efficient method, so.
And will any of these line up with any streets that need repaving and part of our paving plan or anything like that?
We'll certainly consider that. I mean, they won't be paved with this project, but it'll be considered as part of our overall paving plan, so.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Great, okay. Well, we have an executive session this evening, well, as long as we all agree to go to it. So under the authority of ORC 121.22G1, to consider the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee or official.
So move for adoption.
Second?
Ms. Skank, will you please call the roll?
Ms. Vettori?
Yes.
Ms. Nenny?
Yes.
Mr. Moon?
Yes?
Mr. Mulligan?
Yes.
Mayor Condrey?
Yes. Following the executive session, we will adjourn until our next council meeting, which looks like it would be September 1st at 17:30 or 5:30 p.m. in council chambers. And until then, blue skies over Middletown.